I think of anime beach episodes as a quadrant. The x-axis is budget and the y-axis is how different it is from the typical setting. All of animation is a miracle, but the standard anime beach episode is a little less of a miracle than a Disney Renaissance film, because typically the beach episode exists to save budget. Half of the episodes can be a PNG slideshow of the characters showing off their swimsuits, and who's gonna say no to that fan service? It's the beach episode. That's what we're here for. So my point with the y-axis is to establish that this technique isn't exclusive to its setting at the beach. This is just the most common offender. If two characters have a date at the aquarium and it's a whole lot of stolen glances against panning shots of a fish tank, I'd put that about here on the quadrant. Megalobox, a seinen sports anime, has a beach episode. There's an episode where a veteran gets a little PTSD-ish and his mind goes to dark places. It's got a lot of long panning shots and it's missing a big fight scene. So even though the vibe is completely opposite of what we think of as a beach episode, production-wise I am comfortable classifying it as a beach episode. Why am I bringing this up in a review of Ren and Stimpy? Because somehow, the reboot did a beach episode. The episode all about Log has one too many panning shots and reused animation. It was so fucking dry. Out of all of the things in the reboot, I did not expect that. You would think, hell yes, Ren and Stimpy has been defrosted from Cairo Sleep to single-handedly bring back Sakuga to American television. But nope, we already got a beach episode at ground zero. Me. So 2 episodes of the Ren and Stimpy reboot leaked. Each episode has 2 segments, and here's how I'm ranking them. All About Log really was the worst. Second place and terrible is Aw Hell No. This one's also bad, but in a different way. In this episode, Ren and Stimpy pass away. Stimpy goes to heaven and Ren goes to hell. I like the initial conflict that Stimpy is miserable in heaven without Ren, while Ren is having the time of his life down in hell. That's something very unique that you can only do with these characters. Thing is, it takes them a pretty long time to actually get to the afterlife. Once they get there, it's slowed down with so much dialogue. This episode felt like it went against a core of Ren and Stimpy. I was reminded of what John K. said when speaking about dealing with Nickelodeon executives. He said, "The main thing is that they never understood the show, even the basics." I am not talking about the outrageous stuff, just talking about things like, well, we'd like to do a cartoon with Ren and Stimpy in space. Their response was, what do you mean in space? How could they get in space? Well, I'd say, they are just in space in this cartoon. That doesn't make sense, they'd reply. How will the kids understand it? Well, I'd ask, haven't you people ever watched cartoons before? Sometimes Bugs Bunny's in space, sometimes he's a caveman, sometimes he's in a forest. It's a cartoon. They never quite got that. So this episode threw that mentality in the garbage, and I know this reboot has nothing to do with John K. He's not credited anywhere, and I'm not sure on the details, but apparently he's not making any money off of this reboot. So this is it. The ethical Ren and Stimpy show. Now when it comes to good media made by bad people, everyone's got a different line for what's acceptable and what they feel comfortable consuming. And look, I have no interest in convincing you of anything, ever. Well,
good news. This stranger on YouTube agrees with you completely on this controversial, contentious issue. There is no need to be upset. Once this video is over, I am going to door-to-door campaigning for the presidential candidate that you personally support.
Personally, I have always been interested in Ren and Stimpy in its historical context rather than enjoying it as pure television, because I like everything influenced by and descended from Ren and Stimpy. And, for the record, I think SpongeBob is a much better show than Ren and Stimpy. I would guess that Ren and Stimpy was more influential, but I just have a better time watching SpongeBob. I know it's a pretty popular opinion to see SpongeBob as the softened version of Ren and Stimpy, and I don't totally disagree. I see SpongeBob as taking the best parts of Ren and Stimpy and morphing it into something much stronger across the board. If we're talking about Ren and Stimpy's offsprings, every cartoon by Hot Diggity Demon is infinitely better than either show. It's been a while since I watched, but I'd say about half of the original Ren and Stimpy SPUMCO run is a pretty okay cartoon. Bob Camp is a total Chad, but most of the game's era is unwatchable. I'm sorry. My big exception, however, is Stimpy's cartoon show. That one was great. I've always pretended the adult party cartoon doesn't exist. The most interesting thing John K. ever made was his blog. Second place is that Yogi Bear cartoon, and third is the SPUMCO comic collection. Cans without labels can never live up to the hype, and the Simpsons couch gags were disgusting. I like Outsider Art, and this guy is fucking crazy. He thinks a cartoon sucks if it's not changing expressions every 2 seconds. The kind of art I want to make is so opposite of the SPUMCO ideal, but that's exactly why I've wanted to have at least a surface level awareness of that world. But then one day I just kind of outgrew it. I realized John K. peaked with Ren and Stimpy and became aware that it was a whole lot of bark and no bite. Suddenly my perception of even his good work seemed kind of dorky. So when I look at Ren and Stimpy, I see it more as where does it fall on the family tree of animation rather than something worth studying or even enjoying. I want to quote Billy West's thoughts on working with John K. Here's what he said. Genius is the twin brother of madness. Both live in a world created by their own ego. His whole fixation with hell dads and boys and torture and punishment, well, I've made millions and millions of people laugh, but I don't get what's funny about endless repetition of that crap that he dotes on. There's a difference between cries for help and comedy. So back to the Ren and Stimpy reboot. The episode screen time and squatters were both much better. They were a lot punchier, better gags, everything was able to stay moving. I had a pretty alright time watching these. But it was the episode's screen time that sent me down a spiral. Didn't Hot Diggity Demon already do a cartoon where Stimpy Get iPhone? I don't know, man. It just bummed me out. Like, okay, even the worst episode of Ren and Stimpy reboot were still pretty okay. And as far as beach episodes go, All About Log is a lot better than most. Please allow me to get about 5% more of a boomer than I already am, but I cannot fucking stand most modern mainstream American animation. I watched an episode of Big City Greens last time I was in a hotel, and it's like, okay man, congrats on being 2D animated, I guess. But it was so fucking doughy I wanted to puke. Why did everyone shit their pants over Thundercats Roar, but there was no looting and street protests over Big City Greens? Also, hot take alert, but I like the visual design of Carol at the End of the World more than Big City Greens. Fuck you, fight me. Anyway, when I see the Ren and Stimpy reboot, I can't see it as good for what it is. I see it as meekly accepting it with a, well, I guess it's better than the other slop they're making for TV. At least it's not CalArt style. The joy it brings is all very comparative. But why would I go for, it's better than the rest of what's on TV, when there's alternatives to TV? On all of my cartoon reviews, it is guaranteed that someone will pop in and comment something to the extent of, yeah man, mainstream shit sucks, but right now we're in a golden era of indie cartoons. And I give them a high five because that's true, and thank God that's true, and thank God we have all of these new alternative pathways emerging for art. So as far as sequels and reboots go, I guess Ren and Stimpy is a more interesting vehicle to update for the modern day. And if this is a show where animators can have a little more fun, alright, that's cool. But why is this how it has to be done? Why did the network executives have to exhume the corpse of Ren and Stimpy instead of throwing a pile of money in the direction of Monkey Wrench or Dungeon Flippers? Like, we'll give you your experimental animation, but only in the form of a reboot? Fuck off with that. I think Has-Been Hotel has given too many people false hope. Vivzy Pop is definitely a success story, but how likely is it that the Cinderella story will happen a second or a third time? We're in a golden era of indie artists making their pilots, but I doubt most of these will have a big enough fandom to keep going for multiple seasons or cause enough of a stir that big media finds them irresistible. When even the Powerpuff Girls artist is having trouble getting original ideas greenlit, makes everything feel bleak. I mentioned Monkey Wrench earlier, and no tier list of indie animation is complete without it. But even that cartoon is financially struggling. I don't want to say I've given up on Western animation, but I just feel like this isn't where to go for experimental ideas and expressions. I just feel like it's all sort of dead, and on the rare occasion we get something over the top and beautiful, it is the exception. I'm not going to expect it to happen again, or for very long. I mentioned Hot Diggity Demon earlier, and he is a god in my eyes. But you know what? He's tired. He has a chronic illness. He started streamer arc in lieu of cartoonist arc. I hope he gets the rest he needs. He's made such fantastic art, but going at it forever is impossible. Speaking of burnout, I want to bring up manga, my home turf. The average manga is easier for one guy to make than a whole-ass cartoon. Especially with the OEL manga movement, there is a pretty big awareness that the Japanese ecosystem of manga is incredibly flimsy, arguably unethical. Weekly chapters specifically is a huge issue. Even if an artist is capable of doing things weekly, it's impossible for an artist to do it forever. I'm bringing this all up because the Ren and Stimpy reboot is making me question what kind of art I want to consume and what I want to see in the world. Should I oppose this reboot on the merit of being a reboot? Do I want to turn my brain off and enjoy the silly faces? Should I fully embrace being the kind of otaku that Miyazaki would personally fistfight because the art that enriches my life the most is manga and I should just stick to consuming that and to only that? Look, if this Ren and Stimpy reboot comes back with a better swimsuit episode, I'll give it a 10 out of 10. I think I saw the original beach episode at the wrong age, but trying to work things out with questionable art ever since.